What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. I hope you guys have been enjoying my vlogs. I really need to come up with like some sort of intro to my channel. But since I don't have one, let's just jump right into it. This is going to be a spooky video to get us right into the Halloween time, Halloween season. It's your boy. It's your boy. Anyways, today I just wanted to make a video talking to you guys about Ghost Adventures. It's my favorite show right now. I've been watching it nonstop, so of course I had to make a video about it. I wanted to like go over stuff I like about the show, stuff I don't like, and like what I think is like believable as far as like evidence and stuff that I think is not believable. But yeah, first of all, I wanted to just like talk about ghosts in general and like whether I believe in them and what exactly I believe. But basically, I do believe in ghosts. Not like in the way that most people do. I kind of just believe that rather than like a sentient, self-aware like being is like walking around living in my house, I kind of more just believe that like you leave behind like an energetic footprint when you die of some sort. Like in Ghost Adventures or like any ghost hunting show, it's always a place that has some sort of like traumatic death or some crazy stuff happened, because I feel like those places are like most likely to have the biggest energetic footprint. So I kind of just feel like ghosts are not really like aware of us or what's going on in the environment. I kind of feel like they're just kind of like walking around as if either like they still live there, living out their energy from when they were still alive or even when they died. So like, in like ghost stories of like certain places, they'll be like, oh, a man was shot here, shot and killed. So some people say that late at night they hear gunshots going off because it's just like a footprint left behind from what had happened. I don't know if the ghosts actually can interact with us. And if they do, I don't think it's in a way that we understand. Like, I just don't think that we understand exactly what the ghosts are doing when they're communicating with us and what they're thinking. Like, are they aware that they're dead and we're alive? Or do they think they're just like here with us and they're just like not totally aware of everything? I don't know. But yeah, I would like to believe that ghosts can communicate with us. I just don't know. Sometimes I'm convinced, sometimes I'm not. So I'll just leave it there. But I did want to talk about like some creepy stuff that's happened to me. I don't really have a lot of like actual ghost stories, just like creepy stuff that happened to me when I was a kid, basically. But I do have a couple. One happened when I'd say I was about 13, maybe like 14 or 15 actually. I was staying the night at my cousin's house, and always growing up, I remember that like wherever this cousin lived, it was always super scary and always felt haunted to me, and I was always scared, like staying the night at her house. It was weird. Like she had like spirits attached to her or something like that. But specifically this one house, I stayed the night to hang out with her and my little cousins. She had, I think, only 3 kids at the time. And she was so scared of that house. Her husband used to work overnights when they lived there. So she would sleep on the couch and make all 3 of her kids sleep in the living room with her because she did not like sleeping in the back part of the house alone. That night, me and the 3 kids like had this little like pallet on the floor of blankets and pillows. And we all went to bed. I ended up waking up at like 3 or 4 in the morning because it sounded like a loud, heavy footprints across the house, like footsteps. And I had this like Afghan that I was sleeping with, which is like a crocheted blanket. So this like weaved yarn blanket has like holes in it and stuff, you know? So I was like completely covered up in this blanket, totally freaked out, listening to these footsteps all around the house. And then they would like get louder and sound like they were getting closer to me. And then they would get right to me and they'd stop. And through the holes in the blanket, I would feel like this cool, like wind. It was so scary. I almost shit my pants. I laid there in that same position, covered in that blanket for probably like 2 or 3 hours, just waiting for the sun to come up. And as soon as one of the kids woke up, I was like, okay, it's safe now. And I went back to sleep. That one's not as crazy as this next one I'm gonna tell, but it's probably probably one of the only ghost stories I could really think of that's happened to me. But this next one is a lot crazier. Like, I could not explain this to save my life. So I'm gonna like leave names out and stuff because this is a very sensitive subject, I guess, because it does have to do with a death in my family. And I just want to be as respectful as possible. So without going into too much detail, this is what happened. I had downloaded, like, you know those cringy little, like, ghost hunting apps where it'll, like, generate a random word and it's supposed to be like, oh, a ghost is talking to you? So I had downloaded this app just like that. And this was years ago. I want to say 2017 is when this happened. I was hanging out at my mom's house and my brother lived there at the time. And we were all hanging out in the living room. I think my mom had some friends over. We were just hanging out with our family and stuff like that. And me and my brother are like messing with this ghost app and just saying dumb shit. Like, we were like, hey, if there's a ghost here, say something about Star Wars. And the app said, Roger. And if you have never seen Star Wars, there are these little guys. They're called battle droids. And they say, Roger, Roger, like, that's what they're known for. They're famous for saying Roger, Roger, I think. So me and my brother were like, oh my God, it said Roger. It's talking about Star Wars. But we didn't actually think we were talking to a ghost. Like, we were just like, oh my God, what a crazy coincidence, you know? Well, then, we were talking and all hanging out and I just had this ghost app open on my phone. Well, we started talking about my family's bar because some people in my family at the time had owned a bar here in Canyon, and a lot of my family worked there. Like my brother, for example, he was a cook there, and I think also like a dishwasher or something. I don't know. But we were all hanging out and somebody saw on Facebook that they had announced that they were closing the bar. And we were all talking about like, oh my God, that's so crazy, because my brother at the time worked there. And we were just talking about like, it's so crazy that the bar is closing. And my brother was like, that's insane. I didn't even know. We were talking about like how much we were going to miss it and everything. And babe? Yeah. So we were just talking about the bar and all this stuff is going on and right, blah, blah, blah. And I still have this ghost app open on my phone. At this point, I'm not paying any attention to it. And as we're talking, it says bar, B-A-R. And me and my brother were like, oh, that's so freaky. And we just continued talking about it. And then it said the name of one of my family members that worked there. And me and my brother looked at each other and we were like, okay, this is fucking freaky. And then we told my mom that, like, we showed it to her and she said something very eerie, like not thinking anything about it. She just said something along the lines of, great, now something bad is gonna happen at the bar tonight. So we all hung out, we went to bed that night. And keep in mind, I'm not like a kid at this point. I was like 19 when this happened. So I stayed the night on my brother's couch in his room because it was so freaky, and we woke up to my mom knocking on the door the next morning crying to tell us that our family member, whose name was said on the phone, had passed away that night. And I remembered that immediately. Like, that popped into my head. Like, my mom was crying, and then she walked out of the room, and me and my brother were just like in shock, just like sitting there in silence. And then I looked at him and I was like, Mason, do you remember what the ghost app said last night? And his jaw just dropped. I cannot explain that to save my life. Like, I have no explanation for why that would have happened other than it just being the biggest fucking consecutive coincidence that I have ever experienced in my life. And it scared the shit out of me. I deleted it off my phone that day, and yeah, I really don't know what else I can even say about it. Okay, now to move out of the heavy topic, let's get into ghost adventures. So basically, I've just been watching this show for a long time, especially recently. And there are just a lot of things that I really like about the show, and then there are some things that I don't like at all. So that's really like what I wanted to get into. Starting with what I like about the show. So first of all, I would say my favorite piece of equipment they use in their like ghost hunting things is the spirit box. There are people on YouTube who claim to like talk to spirits and stuff using a spirit box, like even claim to talk to dead celebrities, which is like ridiculous. But the way that the spirit box actually works is that it scans through radio frequencies and voices come through. But what's annoying is that just on a regular spirit box, you hear voices from the radio throughout the entire time. You can hear music, you can hear talking, you can hear all kinds of sounds. So it's like basically when people are using a spirit box, they're just picking and choosing what words are the answers to their questions. But what I like about Ghost Adventures is that not only do they have it modified to where it scans through these radio frequencies really fast. So like if a voice from a station were to come through, it would just sound like but not only that, they completely took out the antenna so that it can't pick up radio stations at all. So the entire time they'll be using it, you'll just hear what sounds like a fast scanning of radio static. It just sounds like really loud. But when a voice comes through, that static stops, and you can hear a voice come through over multiple sweeps. So like if it says something like, I'm right here, or some shit like that. So in the time that it takes for it to say, I'm right here, that could be like 4 or 5 sweeps. And the static in the background stops. I really like that. I think it's believable, because how would the sweeps just stop long enough for it to pick up like an entire sentence or even just one entire word when it's sweeping so fast? Another piece of evidence that I really, really like is the SLS camera, which is basically what they do is they take the camera from the Xbox Kinect. This camera uses like a bunch of infrared dots, like it shoots infrared lasers across the room that you can't see them, but you can see them on like night vision. So it uses these lasers to like track your movement and stuff like that. But what they do is they connect that camera to some sort of device like a tablet or like a laptop or something with a software built into it that shows what the camera is seeing, as well as like some other information of like what it's recording. So what you see on this screen is the Kinect camera will map a stick figure. So there will be like a little square here, a line going down, another square, a line going out, and a line going out, arms, body, legs, and it shows up as a little stick figure. So the way they use it is that as they're walking through with this camera and it picks up a stick figure, that means that the SLS camera is mapping a human figure in the room. And the reason that I think this is really believable is because of the accuracy of the Xbox Kinect camera. Like, it was designed to map even facial features. It can track facial movements. It was designed to be very accurate, and it was designed to track up to 6 people at a time. A lot of times they're able to get these like stick figures to like do things on command, and it is cool and freaky. And then the last thing I want to talk about what I like on Ghost Adventures is the piece of equipment they use called the Ovilus. It's the Ovilus 3. And I didn't really know how to explain it, so I went ahead and I looked up the definition of it, or like the description on Amazon of the device. And it basically says this: the Ovilus 3 takes readings from the environment using several sensors, including one for electromagnetic readings, and uses a math formula to convert the readings to a number that responds to a certain word that is stored in the word database. The word database consisting of more than 2,000 words. So basically, this device has like sensors that measure a bunch of different things, and the biggest one being electromagnetic fields. And they turn all of the data that the device receives and assign it to a word within the device. But apparently it has this thing called a phonetic mode, which does that exact same thing, but rather than corresponding these numbers to a word, they correspond this data to like phonetic sounds, allowing, rather than the ghost like basically picking a word from the database, it allows the ghost to just pick sounds and put these sounds together to make whatever words they're trying to say. And a lot of times that has produced some of the creepiest and most believable evidence on Ghost Adventures. However, the Ovilus also kind of gets me into one of the things I don't like about the show. So, one of my number one gripes about the show is that you're gonna just get random answers, right? Like, the Ovilus 3 is constantly reading information in the environment. And so it's bound to sometimes just receive some data that's not really anything and just spit out a word of whatever that data corresponded with. And so when a random word comes out that doesn't really make sense to what they're investigating, I feel like they stretch that evidence to make it relevant to whatever it is they're investigating, or whatever there is they're talking about, or whatever question they ask the ghost. They will stretch any word they get on the Ovilus to make it correspond, or like to make it relevant. And I can't stand that, because there's nothing wrong with being like, this one might have just been a random word. You know, this one just doesn't make sense to what we were talking about. But they don't. And I hate that, because it's such a stretch sometimes, and it drives me nuts. Another thing that I absolutely hate, the number one piece of evidence that I like the least, is the EVP recorder. I'd say 90% of the time, or more than 90% of the time, every EVP, which is electronic voice phenomena, just sounds like nothing. It either just sounds like air, or like shuffling of the microphone, and it always comes out as a whisper. Why, when they use an EVP, is it always a whisper? Like, there's no whispers on the spirit box. You don't hear whispers on the spirit box. You hear voices. Like, why is every EVP a whisper? It's not believable. And the whole thing about the EVP recorder is that it records things that we don't hear with our own ears. So, like, if I turn my head, I'm not going to hear the air rushing past my ears as I turn my head. But if you have this EVP in your hand and you turn your hand, the EVP will hear that air rushing past. So a lot of times they just get these random answers that just sound like nothing, but they put the caption on the screen and it makes you like, oh yeah, I kind of do hear that. But if you weren't looking at the screen when they showed the caption, you would think it was nothing, like this one. And then there are times where you'll watch the footage from when they received that EVP, and the sound that they capture like correlates perfectly to the movement of the person holding the recorder. And it'll come out like something is whispering to you, but if you're watching the video, it corresponds perfectly to how they're moving the recorder, and it's probably just air entering the microphone. And this is a really good example of that.
Turn your flashlight on.
Now, there are some times that I think that they do get good evidence on the EVP recorder, like when it is a tonal voice, when it actually sounds like somebody talking, not whispering, but talking. And that is especially believable to me because air wouldn't make that noise. Like when they catch a tonal voice in an EVP, it is something that you know they would have heard it, like if it was happening around them, but they don't, and it's captured on the EVP recorder. Like this one, for example, I think is an amazing piece of evidence captured on the EVP voice recorder. Yeah, other than that, those there are few examples of times where they get a really good capture on the EVP, but other than that, I hate it. I hate the EVP evidence. I hate the stupid voice recorder. It's stupid and it's not believable. And then a lot of the things that I don't like about Ghost Adventures could honestly just be summed up into a few words, and that is Zach Bagans' personality, I guess you could say. For example, when he's just like bossy with everyone, which I feel like has to be the reason why Nick left in the first place, is probably because Zach is a douchebag. But like how he bosses everyone around and how he always makes Aaron do shit that he doesn't want to do, but he uses the excuse of, Aaron, it has to be you because you're more scared than any of us, so your fear might get a response out of the spirits or whatever. It's just so annoying. He's such a dick to Aaron all the time. Like, he'll make Aaron go into like the most fucked up places, and it's never Zach going in there by himself doing this stuff that nobody wants to do, because he pretends that he's like, oh, well, I'm not scared enough. Aaron is the most scared, so they're gonna feed off of his fear, and then that'll get us a manifestation. But then there are times where he is scared to do something and he won't fucking do it. But Aaron can do it. I don't get it. Anyways, I guess they all kind of do this, but especially Zach, when they're like, oh my God, the energy in here. I just felt an extremely negative energy. And it's never just that. It's never like, oh my God, this room has a really bad energy to it. It's always Zach saying some shit like, oh, whenever I walked into this room, I just felt pain and sorrow all around me. Or he'll be like, this ghost has such a negative energy. Nick, I was looking at you and I just wanted to punch you in the face. But even more than that, I feel like I don't think I've seen another Ghost Adventures crew member do this. Maybe a little bit, but not to the extent that Zach has, where he will like literally pretend to be possessed and start screaming at everyone. But I know he's done that a few times and it drives me nuts every time. And then the last thing I have on my little list of like what I hate about Ghost Adventures is when they invite people in on the investigations. Like this one episode, for example, when they were investigating this demon that you're not supposed to say the name of, they were investigating it in a couple's house, and the couple was there during the entire investigation. And the wife, oh my god, she was so fucking annoying. And she at one point just started like walking around like laughing while all this scary stuff was happening, literally pretending to be possessed. And then like she walked out of the house at one point and left, and nobody knew where she went, and she came back acting all like dazed and like she was like fucking high or something, like, with her like pants undone, like her belt was unbuckled, just like hanging down, and she pretended like she didn't notice when they were talking earlier about how the demon is like sexual and all this. But then all of a sudden she's okay, she starts acting normal again, but then she starts crying. Suddenly she wasn't possessed anymore. Like, she was never possessed. She was just scared. First she was like aloof and like laughing and stuff like that. Now all of a sudden she's crying to her husband that the ghost was sexual. Huh? And then at one point she just leaves the house entirely, and they have to leave the investigation to go find her. But there's a lot of examples like that, especially in one episode called Demons in Seattle. They're investigating this couple's house, and it's obviously totally fake, and they all know it's fake too. They don't catch any evidence the entire episode, but then at the end, the girlfriend starts walking up to Zach like, really? Are you really trying to act possessed right now because you know they're not capturing any fucking evidence of your shitty, haunted house, and now you have to make it believable so that nobody realizes you're a fucking fraud? That was annoying. But more than all of that, I absolutely hate mediums when they have like these psychic mediums on the show. Like, the best example of this is the Black Dahlia House episode. Okay, I just tried to go outside to make sure nobody was murdering a dog in my yard, but I couldn't find anything, and I didn't see a dog. But that was really weird, and I hope that dog is okay. Anyways, the medium seance thing in the Black Dahlia episode, that bitch was so stupid and annoying. The way that she was like she literally kept like pretending to be possessed throughout the whole thing, but then it was like, no, she's not possessed, she's just, I don't even know how to explain it, but she was literally like, at one point, like the Ovilus started getting like weird answers, and every time an answer would come through like a device, she would be like and start like being like acting a complete fucking fool. And you can't help but sit there and like and just think like, why would Ghost Adventures want to damage their credibility by having these dumb ass people on their show who contribute nothing but like bad acting? That's all they are, is really fucking bad actors. Like, there's sometimes, like, there's this one couple that they've had on that is like totally respectable. One lady is like a medium, she sees ghosts, and like her husband draws what he sees. Like, he sees ghosts in his mind and he like draws them, and they end up being like kind of accurate. I'm not saying I believe in it, but they're at least respectable. If they are faking it, they do it in a respectful way. Like, this fucking bitch during this Black Dahlia seance, I just don't even know what to say about her. It was just so obnoxious, and I was offended watching that. Like, you really think I'm that fucking stupid? It offends me how stupid you think I am to believe that you are literally getting possessed by the man who killed fucking Elizabeth Short. But yeah, that's just some of the stuff that drives me crazy. That's some of the stuff I like about the show. But I did want to get into a little bit of my favorite episodes and like my favorite things that have happened on some of these episodes. So let's get into that. So the first episode I want to talk about is the Tuolumne Hospital, or Tuolumne. I don't know how to say it, but it's the first episode I ever saw that like had a piece of evidence that was like so crazy that I was like shocked. Basically what happens is, as they're setting up for the investigation, they have not started the lockdown yet. They have the SLS camera set up in one of these rooms, like one of these operating rooms, and they've got this big CPR dummy on an operating table. And what happens is the SLS camera actually begins mapping a figure, and the arms look like they're trying to do something to this dummy on the table. So basically what they end up doing, Nick lays down on the table, and after like 30 minutes of him laying there or something like that with nothing happening, he starts talking about how he needs to get up, he's not feeling so good, or like he feels something weird around him, and then all of a sudden he jumps up in pain holding his stomach, and right as he jumps up, you see that figure map back in and look like it's hitting him in the stomach. Freaky. I mean, I don't know if this thing was like trying to hurt him, or if it was like just doing something, like maybe he thought it needed, like the ghost thought Nick needed surgery. I don't know, but Nick said he felt something like this sharp pain in his stomach, and he jumped up as soon as that figure mapped in doing something to his stomach. Real quick, I had to add in here, I feel like it's important to say Nick is not looking at any sort of screen. He has no idea that this figure mapped in. And so it just adds to the credibility that he jumped up in pain as soon as that happened. Later, they use the spirit box to ask, what were you trying to do with the patient? And the spirit box says, help patient. So the ghost says that it was trying to help Nick, but could that be a lie? Who knows? Another one of my favorites is actually an episode I just watched for the first time the other day. It's from the Gettysburg episode, and there are a few really cool things that happen. One of the things that happen, I'm not too sure about. Basically, they're outside with the a thermal vision camera, which shows everything in like these bright colors based on like what temperature it is. Basically, as they're panning around the field, they see a figure, a human figure, walking across the field, and they claim to see that it is a soldier based on the fact that it has a backpack and is holding what looks like a big gun. And then they also point out that it looks like the figure begins to go into a ready, aim, fire position. I don't know about that. It definitely obviously looks like a person walking, but do I think it was a ghost? I don't know. And I especially don't know if it was the figure of a soldier at war. But either way, still pretty creepy. Sometimes they pick up these like human figures, and that could literally just be people walking around them. I honestly, that's almost more scary to me than it being a ghost, because humans can do a lot worse shit than ghosts can, in my opinion. And who knows how many people are around when they're investigating these locations in the middle of the night, just watching them the whole time. No, thank you. Another thing that happens on the Gettysburg episode is they investigate the Jenny Wade house, which is a story I had never heard before this episode. And if you didn't know it either, basically the story is about this girl named Jenny Wade who was staying at her sister's house at the time of the Gettysburg battle. And they would basically feed and like give water to like nearby Union soldiers. So like they would come over and they would make bread for them and basically just help them pretty much in this whatever way they could. So as they enter the Jenny Wade house, they're using a device similar to the Ovilus, but it's like goggles that you wear on your head, and it's like a screen inside of them. I don't know, it's weird, but it's the same thing as the Ovilus, basically. As they go in, they start getting like words that seem random at first, like pass and property, and then they start, stretching this to like make sense. They're like, yes, we did pass into your property right now when we stepped over that wall. And that just seemed like a little bit of random gibberish to me. But then it started saying things that actually made sense, like helpful, drink. And then when they ask, what do you have to drink? It says water. And so Zach, not realizing that he has on a Union soldier's hat and a backpack, starts wondering what these answers could mean when Aaron remembers that Jenny Wade used to feed and offer water to the Union soldiers in battle. So they obviously come to the conclusion that Jenny is talking to them because Zach looks exactly like a Union soldier. After that, they start asking her questions on the EVP voice recorder, which, as I said earlier, I don't really believe. Most of the crap that comes out of those recorders just sounds like air or whatever, shuffling sounds. But this one, although it is a whisper, sounds really interesting to me. Maybe just because it's really like sad and emotional and something that nobody would have expected, so I just want to believe it. But it is interesting. What I forgot to mention about Jenny Wade was that she was shot in the home by Confederate soldiers. They opened fire on the house and she was killed. That is important. I should have mentioned that in the beginning. But anyways, they start asking her about her boyfriend, who was a Union soldier who also died. And when they start asking her questions, they say something along the lines of, I know you wanted to get married and start a family with him. Is there anything you wanted to tell him before you died? And let me just show the clip.
Did you want to tell him anything before you died?
So yeah, really sad, really emotional. I feel like it's better than a lot of the EVP recordings they've gotten in the past, but still, I don't know if it's 100% believable, but I kind of want to believe it. I want to believe that it's true. I don't know why, because it's really sad, and that would be even more depressing if it was, but I don't know, spooky, I guess. A little short one I have here is the exorcism house. When they investigated the house that was the subject of the original Exorcist movie. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in this episode, but my favorite thing that happens is the creepy fucking spirit box answers they get in the house. Not only are the answers really scary, but the voice that comes through on one of the answers absolutely makes me shit my pants every time I see it. The first thing that happens is they ask the ghost what happened here in 1949. Because a lot of people say apparently that the reason that the exorcist happened, like the reason that child was possessed, was because he played with a Ouija board and it summoned a demon. So they ask the spirit box what happened here in 1949, and this is the response they get. Creepy. Absolutely not okay. That freaks me out. But then later, I don't even know what to say about this one. It is just so scary. The voice that comes through absolutely makes me sick. It is so scary when they ask the ghost what its name is. This is what comes through. Yeah. I don't even know what to say about that. Diablo and the voice it's said it in, I can't. I don't even know what to say about that. The last thing I wanted to talk about is what happens at the end of the Hellhole Prison episode. I don't remember what the prison is actually called, but the episode is called Hellhole Prison if you guys want to go watch it, because it is pretty freaking spooky. But the ending is actually like less scary and more just like really cool, but like insane. So basically what happens is everybody's in the nerve center, which if you don't know what that is, that's where like Billy and Jay sit, where they watch the live feed of all the cameras across the location, while the rest of the guys are like out on the location investigating. The nerve center is where they sit to watch the live video feeds. So basically everyone's at nerve center and they start hearing from far away what sounds like old-timey music, and everyone hears it with their own ears, and they even catch it on one of the X cameras. After that, one of the lights that illuminates nerve center starts malfunctioning. It starts like flickering, and then at one point it just shuts off completely, and then when they go to investigate it, it turns back on. And what they notice is right next to that light is this big display case full of like instruments and old black and white pictures showing the prison band. So they theorize that, oh my gosh, what if all this is happening? Like the music brought us over to nerve center, and then this light started flashing and it brought us over to this display case. Like, what if they were wanting to show us their band? Like, what if they wanted to see this and that's why they're doing all this stuff? So then they decide to go look in the prison theater room and see if they can like catch any evidence. And what happens is like one of the most amazing things I've ever seen on Ghost Adventures so far, of all the episodes I've watched. So basically how it starts is they walk in with the SLS camera and they immediately start mapping in figures. First, one shows up on the right, then another one on the left, and then eventually one pops up in the middle. They start pointing out that these figures look like they're playing instruments.
Playing a guitar. Bro, he's playing a guitar.
They even point out that one looks like he's banging on a drum, and then, right as they notice that, this figure pops in for just a few seconds and appears to be dancing before stepping back out of frame. All of that's already going on is like amazing and crazy, right? Then suddenly all of the figures disappear except for one, and he appears to be tap dancing, and he really does look like he's tap dancing. It's cool. Then suddenly Aaron starts clapping, and when they start clapping, the figure bends over as if it's taking a bow in response to their applause. And so they start freaking out. They're like, oh my god, he's bowing. But even more amazing than that, Aaron says, show us your dance moves, buddy. And he starts jumping around again. He goes from being totally still, bowing, to doing what I can only describe as dancing. And they start freaking out. The ghost is like jumping all around, doing these crazy moves. And I'm sorry, that doesn't look anything else. Like, that doesn't look like anything else to me but dancing. And that episode, that ending completely blew my mind. I don't know if I've ever seen anything else on Ghost Adventures that was like so entertaining and like so crazy. Like the way that these figures just seem to be responding to what they were saying and what they were doing. They seem to be interacting. That scene on its own like almost completely changes the way I think about ghosts, because I feel like that part is just crazy. Like if I was there, I would be shitting and pissing my pants. But So that's it for my first Ghost Adventures video. Hopefully, there will be more to come in the future. I watch a lot of Ghost Adventures, so a couple more ideas I have in mind is like my favorite like funny moments from the show, because there's a lot of stuff that I actually was gonna talk about in this video, but I didn't want it to be too long, of just like funny stuff that happens. And then I kind of want to just start doing like talk through reviews of like my favorite episodes and like the evidence they catch. But yeah, so hopefully this one was enjoyable, and you know, hopefully if I make more of these Ghost Adventures episodes, you guys will like them and watch them and enjoy it. Maybe this will be like my new thing that I do regularly. I'll just try to keep making Ghost Adventures videos if people like them. But yeah, so that's it for this video. I hope it turns out good. We'll see. I've got a lot of editing to do, so it might be a couple days after filming this that I post it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy, and thanks for watching.